Welcome to the Safe Business Agility Podcast. This is the place to get advice, stories, perspectives, and updates about safe and related topics to help you work differently and build the future. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. This week, we are excited to welcome Justin Oki of Kendis. Justin is one of the co-founders of Kendis, which is a PI planning platform to help you be more efficient, more visual, more interactive, and all of the things in your safe ecosystem. So enjoy this one where Justin and I talk about the origins of Kendis, his time as a law enforcement officer, my time as a grunt, and the future of Kendis. Justin, we're sitting here today having a conversation because something in Scaled Agile has recently caught you a little bit off guard. We purchased a company called PIplanning.io, and that's a company that's a little competitive to yours. But we still have all of the love in the world for you. And I think even though there is that thing, I think we're going to find that our worlds are still pretty well aligned. So Justin Oki, welcome. We want to talk about you. We want to talk about the podcast, and we also want to own our own stuff. So we're going to own that first. Now let's talk about you.
Thank you very much, Adam. I didn't expect you to do that.
I told you we were going to be honest and authentic, so there you go.
It was a bit of a surprise to know that Scaled Agile will move into the tooling sector. But to be honest, I really get on with the guys at PIplanning.io. So if I introduce myself, I'm obviously from Kendis. I deal with all of the sales and the partnerships, as well as dealing with our competitors, having a look at our competitors and talking to them, making friends with them, seeing what we can learn or steal from them.
You creatively borrow, Justin. Creatively borrow, and imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. I get it. I've worked in product.
But it's, you know what, it's so PI planning app is solely based on PI planning, and it makes sense as well for Scaled Agile to purchase them. It really does. But Kendis, as you mentioned, we're kind of moving away from just the PI planning. So in Kendis, we started off as a PI planning tool, actually, Adam.
Can you tell me about that, Justin? So what was your solution that you came to market with in that space?
Yeah, sure. So in 2018, we were a group of consultants that were working in Amsterdam. And there was a need for a tool, and obviously we didn't know about the great PI planning app then. So the thinking of it was just to create a tool for the PI planning. We got together, drunken night, drinking lots of rum, and decided to hire some of our developers that we knew and created this app just for the PI planning. And as we were using it, we kind of realized, well, actually the easy part is the PI planning app, and then we'd kind of leave it until the next PI planning. But we wanted to be able to track what was happening visually on the board, because as you know, when you do PI planning, especially in a physical room, there's this, you put all the stickers on the board there, and then it just sort of decays until, Post-it notes drop off and it looks weathered and teared. Ready for your next PI plan. You rip that down and start a new one.
Well, and I think you just kind of mentioned it too, but a plan is only good for about the minute that it's done, then it starts to decay, right? And it's, in PI planning, it's not a definite plan for the next several weeks. It's, here are the things we want to accomplish through our PI objectives, and this is generally how we're going to go about it. But we also embrace Agile principle number 10, which is the art of maximizing the art of the stuff we don't do. And the goal isn't to do all of that stuff. The goal is to do as little of that stuff as we can to achieve the outcome. So you're right, it's living and breathing. And also, have you heard of slickies?
No, what's slickies?
Okay, I just learned about these. They're pretty awesome. So you're right, the Post-it notes, if you don't tear them just correctly, and if the humidity in the room goes up just a little bit, they fall.
Yeah.
Slickies are a static cling sticky note that you can put on like a dry erase board, and they lay perfectly flat. They don't fall, and you can take a finger and just kind of slide them around. They're super cool. And they're also dry erase.
Oh, perfect. I didn't know about that at all.
I didn't either. I was shocked to see them. I didn't know what they were. I Googled it, Amazon saved me. So that's what I'm using when in PI planning when we do it face to face. But you bring up a really good point. I think in the years I've been doing this, the biggest pain of PI planning has been the day after or the evening after, where we have to take all of the stuff that's on the board and put it in the tool. And what I also learned during the remote world was that when you do it natively in a digital space, you do also lose something, because there is a lot that you gain by being able to touch and interact and move things around. And that's where you all have really kind of thrived, right? You still retain that ability to be physical, but in the digital, and you're solving the pain of taking the digital and moving it into the other digital.
The best case scenario is that everybody is physically present at the PI planning. We all know that it's all of these discussions that happen on the side. Those are the most vital discussions. The best place is to have it in one location and albeit on a wall somewhere, displayed on a wall. So with that in mind, we actually built Kendis so that you can visualize it on a big screen. And you can still do all of even the whole kind of moving putting the red wall
Sure.
String line between features. You can even do that in Kendis, where you can drag it across. We actually tried to remove that that functionality in Kendis, but we had lots of complaints. People wanted that to just be able to physically drag it from one corner to the other. It was just unreal.
Well, and that's by design too. I mean, I remember my first PI planning, we'll just say it was a long time ago. And, we walked in with that ball of red string, and I was having people, with a paper hole punch, punch holes in one Post-it, punch holes in the other, and then measure and cut the string and tie the string. And they would always ask me, Adam, is this really necessary? And I said, well, it is. And let me tell you why. Because one, when you make that physical connection, you're also making the connection in your brain. You're remembering that, hey, I need to talk to these people. We need to collaborate. I tied this stupid red string. I'm not going to forget them. And then also, it's a way of making the pain of the dependency real, right? If you go to a PI planning board and it looks like a bowl of red spaghetti was just thrown up there, the goal isn't to get good at managing that, right? The goal is to resolve that, because those are all dependencies. It all represents technical or operational debt. In most cases, you're going to have some dependencies, but you shouldn't have that many. So by making that pain real and making it visible, it also makes apparent the fact that this is a problem that we need to do something about, because that's a hard thing to manage. Wouldn't it be cool if we didn't have to manage that? Well, the best way to get rid of that problem is to fix the technical debt or the operational debt that underpins it. So I think that's a really cool thing, that people recognize the importance of that, the importance of the physical interaction. And they said, hey, Kendis, we want that back.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And it's something that always shocks management, doesn't it? When they have a look at the board there and there's all that red string going, all different directions.
Technical debt it's an IT thing until you can see it, right? Because I think a lot of folks think, oh, well, those are just words that IT uses when they don't want to do actual stuff. Technical debt, what is that? But then when you see it and you realize, the thing that I like to often bring up is, well, there's an operational component to that. So all that red string, that kind of represents something we introduced in a project, and we said we would fix that workaround in a later release, but it never became a priority. So for a lot of those things, there's probably a person somewhere doing something outside of ideal operations to work around that technical problem, which introduces an operational deficiency. So if you fix one, you fix the other, and you, by orders of magnitude, start gaining capacity and capability just by cleaning your own house.
And it's what we've done in Kendis. So all of those red strings that we've got on the Kendis board, we've actually made intelligent. So we provide you with an easy way to manage those dependencies. So we'll give you that list format that you can sort by either teams or by sprints or iterations, whatever you need to sort by. So we've got a really intelligent way to deal with it. But one thing that we've added as well is you could have a responsible person for these dependencies. So you can actually, not chase, that sounds a bit bad, but know who is responsible for these dependencies.
You want to know who to collaborate with.
Yes, that's an easy way a nicer way to put it. So we've made that available in Kendis, and I really want to know feedback actually from customers, because it's relatively new. concept that we've introduced. So we'll look at that and try and get some feedback from customers. But having somebody who's responsible for dependencies, not just about user stories, or features, who's responsible for those, but actual dependencies, I think that really would help organizations.
I agree. I think that's one of those points where the culture dictates how we behave as a result of that accountable person. What we'd want to do, I assume, is kind of frame it as this is the person responsible for resolving that dependency. So meaning that our goal is to get rid of this thing, and this is the person we want to bug until the thing's gone. And it's another layer of accountability, which is really cool. I think that's an important thing, especially as you start resolving. We often talk about that management's the only one that can change the system. So if we can start calling out, hey, who's responsible for changing the system to make our lives easier? I mean, there's a lot of accountability there. I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. With all these big organizations, it's so difficult to keep on top of all of this, isn't it? I mean, we've got, as I'm sure you've worked with, companies that have got 60 plus arts, and you've got dependencies between arts, and it just becomes a whole, using the metaphor of the red wall, spaghetti. It's incredible. So trying to make that easier to visualize that is our way of trying to, help the cause, I guess. And also we've got even things like a dashboard, for example, that you can see the strong relationships, the teams that have the strongest relationships.
Oh, that's really cool. So like the closest collaborators, that could even be a data point in the future. So if you want to repurpose teams, or not repurpose, but you want to start cross-skilling, that could give you good data points to say, hey, these are the folks that are most closely related. Let's see if there's an opportunity here to make us even more efficient.
That's exactly it. That's exactly our way of thinking. You've got actual data then that you can take to the bosses or whoever needs to make those changes, and then you've actually got data to show them, to your evidence, if you like, to make those changes. Yeah, so we've got all of that as well.
So Justin, take me through the timeline from bottle of rum and developers to 2023 in June.
So actually, you might not know this because I don't tell many people, but I'm a former police officer. I was a detective in the Met for 16 years.
I love that, and we're gonna have to talk about that because I'm also a grunt by trade, and I spent a lot of years just dragging my knuckles and doing Neanderthal things. You were much smarter than me because you're an actual law enforcement officer and not just some hired muscle. But there's still commonality there, and that's a good rum conversation.
Tell me, Adam, what's a grunt? A grunt.
So a grunt is someone in the military who does the absolute just stupid work. And I can say that because I was one and everyone else knows it, but we're the ones that they tell, go forward fast, don't ask questions.
Okay.
So they give you a lot of Red Bull and a lot of false confidence and say you're the best, go. And then you jump off of things and jump out of things and run through things. And it's a testosterone driven job, Justin. It was fun at the time, but boy, I'm glad I eventually decided to become more intelligent than I was then and better educated. But not to say that, it was funny. I was at work last week. I was at the Scaled Agile headquarters, and I was really appreciating my grunt roots because no matter what, right, I am not above any kind of work. I will do anything that needs to be done, no questions asked. And we were getting ready for an event, and the office was dirty. So, what do? I clean the office. I polish the desks. I take out the trash because it needs to be done. And I think, like, for me at least, it's because of that history I had in the military where, my job when we were deployed was go forward fast, hard. My job when we weren't deployed was clean oil spots out of the motor pool, pick up cigarette butts even though you don't smoke, and paint rocks. So I am not above any work and I'll do anything. And that's what being a grunt's all about. I will do all of the things to the best of my ability, no matter what. And you being in law enforcement, you went through the academy, like you had some of that. You know about hard, thankless, menial work. And I think that's why we do different things now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, it definitely helps in all scenarios, all situations. You don't think about that when you're in it. You kind of, when you want to come out of it, it's a bit of a scary world out there, isn't it? You don't know what you're going to go into. But actually, it helps in all those situations. What you've just described there, for example, I would love 100 of those in my organization. That would be fantastic. Just do not, of course, I want them to be creative and have their own mind and feel free to kind of critique any kind of decision, but those that just put their head down and just grind, that's very difficult to see in a person unless they've been in a career like yours, for example.
I think finesse is also important because not everything can be fixed with a hammer, but
No. Okay.
All right, so from law enforcement, take us forward.
Yes. Okay. So, and then when I came to this organization to do this, the PI planning and so on, we, as I mentioned, that we came up with the concept of needing a tool for this PI.
That was 2018, you said, Justin?
That was 2018, yeah. And then we started on the tracking side of things. And actually, back then there wasn't too many tools in that domain. So it was something that we really kind of, it was really beneficial for these organizations that we were all working in. So actually, Kendis started off as, just a free kind of software for these organizations. We then moved over to Finland. We set up a company in Finland, and we have now, people based in Finland, people based in Amsterdam. We've got people in London. We've opened up a virtual office in the US. Next year, we're going to open up a physical office in the US. So we went from being a free software tool for some small organizations to actually then just marketing it out to the wider world. And I think, to be honest, with a lot of tools, we became a lot more successful during COVID period because people were looking for different alternatives rather than actually physically being in a room, because obviously that was working for them. So they didn't even need a tool. And then when sadly COVID hit, people couldn't travel all across the world. So then we just had an influx of customers, and we've been growing since then.
I think some other things have changed too, right? I think COVID was obviously an accelerator, but I think through that acceleration, people have learned the importance of having that digital solution. And I also think that, maybe pre-COVID, there was still a lot of let's try this out and see how it goes philosophy, where now for a lot of enterprises, this is just how they work. So they're really seeking efficiency, and they're starting to realize that things like, stickies on a wall don't necessarily pass a security audit. So we need something more secure, something more readily available to control. So I think that there was an acceleration, but I don't think that you would backslide because the importance has been established. Hybrid work, at the very least, is here to stay, and a lot of organizations are staying remote, us included. We shifted from an organization based in Boulder with a lot of our consulting staff or people who had been consultants. So framework team, people like Joe and I, we're all over the world. But during COVID, everybody scattered, right? And we've learned that we can be hyper efficient in our context. We don't need the expensive large building. We need a space for PI planning a few times a year, but that's a lot smaller of a footprint. So I think you'll see that. And I am curious where you intend to end up in the US.
I actually don't know. We've got the virtual office set up in Delaware at the moment. I'm praying that it's somewhere warm, because I don't think Delaware gets too warm. Do you know what I mean?
Delaware has some beaches. I wouldn't say they're anywhere close to exotic. Like Rehoboth and Bethany are cool. They're East Coast beaches that aren't quite Northeast. Like, it's a lot nicer and warmer than some of the things in Massachusetts and New York, but the winters, you still have snow on the beach.
I like somewhere to run away, because Helsinki, they don't play. It gets like -30, -35 during the winter months, and the winter months are long. Then I don't want to then go to the US office and still have the
still
same,
be cold.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? There was a Safe Summit in San Diego, and I fell in love with that city when I was there. It's a beautiful city, isn't it?
It's a different California city because it is a very military city. Like Navy Special Warfare Command is based there. There's Marine Corps bases pretty close. There's Army bases not too far away. There's a lot of Navy. So you get a lot of that with the perfect California weather. Plus, you're also, an hour, 45 minutes from Mexico, which is fun. I would advocate for Raleigh, but man, I'll tell you, it gets cold here in the winter. You were starting to mention getting into a lot of corporate spaces. And I think what's interesting there is you see a lot of organizations that even though there are integrated and stacked solutions available for the work that we do, most everybody chooses their own custom stack, right? So you'll have a different tool for PI planning versus what you do for portfolio management versus team management versus art management. And it's complicated, but there's reasons for that, right? I mean, because you don't want to put too much trust in a single vendor. So a lot of procurement teams are pushed to find a multi-vendor solution, so there's not a single point of failure. So I think that you're going to have a lot of opportunity. I think the US and obviously Western Europe are very mature markets. They're the furthest along in this way of working. Here in the US, there's a lot of government opportunity. There's a lot of aerospace and defense and just really big stuff. So I think that's going to be pretty cool for you. San Diego, Tampa, there's a lot of good access to those people.
You're absolutely right. And going back to the stats as well, it might not just be because of the trust in the vendor, but it's obviously different tools have their own speciality.
So what is yours, Justin? What's the special sauce that makes Kendis Kendis?
It's what we're trying to solve in Kendis is all that middle management. And I'll be frank, it's with those Excel sheets. So we've got all of the teams that are working in there, whether it's the Atlassian products that I'm not going to ever mention publicly, or the Microsoft products, but we've got those teams working away. And then there's a little bit, although we try our best to say break down these silos, I'm sure they're very difficult to break down when an organization is structured that way. And actually, the delivery teams are not the heart of it. So it's quite understandable that they've got all of their Excel sheets because they're responsible for resources, for finances, for budget in different countries. They've got a huge amount that they're responsible for, not just the portfolio epics and all of that kind of that funnels down into delivery. So that's what Kendis is trying to help out with. We've got obviously the integration with those team delivery tools, but just that middle layer there, the people that are kind of, yes, they're taking that information from the reports and crying out for faster delivery from the teams, but they still have to maintain all of their PowerPoints and their Excel sheets. So that's really what we're focusing on. We do call it an org view rather than portfolio level in SAFe.
Well, I think that's a good perspective though, right? Because when you look at the dual operating system, we talk a lot about the execution piece and the value delivery, but we also talk about the importance of maintaining that organizational structure, because even though the products and our focus will change over time, the structure needs to provide that continuity. And I think what you're taking on is a very noble undertaking. I think very early on in my career working in organizational design and strategy and all those things, the temptation when we first adjusted to this way of working was to, well, let's just cut out the middle layer. Let's just go fire the PMO, cost savings, efficiencies, and all of those things. And that's such a mistake, because even though we're focused on team efficiency and value delivery and all of those great things, the organizations that we serve, I mean, they're complicated, right? And there's no amount of two pizza teaming our way out of the complexity of building a car or building an airplane or building a cruise ship or maintaining a financial system. The nature of the work and the scale of the work is complicated. And we need to have help navigating the social structure as our problems. There's going to be things that we do that we can do as a team efficiently without any outside help. There's going to be things that we do as an art or even as a portfolio. But there's going to be other things that we do that are cross-cutting. And if you look at, just pick any financial institution anywhere in the world, when a new regulation comes down that impacts that organization, well, now you're talking about cross-organizational change that's needed to be done in concert to satisfy the regulator. And the only way you're going to do that in an efficient and cohesive way is if you have relationships that are able to manage the complexity of the system. And that's the role that, I view that middle management plays, is they navigate across within their peer group, plus or minus one a layer, to really understand what's going on across the enterprise, to have the relationships. So if we need trade-offs, if we need help, that those relationships and those network connections are there. And I think what you're describing is, it's a great way to visualize that. It's a great way to reach out and say, well, who do I need to connect with in this particular space that I don't already know? And, again, we talk about middle management. And they often say, well, I don't see myself in the big picture. If I'm not supposed to be, a task director, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, here's your answer. It's, you've got to go out there and make the large and complex network a little bit smaller through human relationships. And it sounds like what you're doing in your space is going to strongly support that.
You're absolutely spot on. That's a perfect example with the compliance that you mentioned there. And we're creating an area where you can actually create departments within Kendis as well. And you can choose what you would like to track within those departments. So imagine then you can, even in your example, you can track the progress all across the board, whether it's across one release train, multiple solution trains, whatever it may be, but you can track the progress of them. If they link neatly to the portfolio epics and all of that, then that's fine. You can track them. But if you've got your own, pieces that you need to do, then you can also track those as well and link it to a hierarchy and be able to track all the way down to the funnel. It's not an easy task, and I know that we're going to be learning along the way. But step by step, we've got a release coming out in a couple of weeks, and that will give us a heads up on, we can kind of learn how organizations could possibly use it. And then the plan is to increase on that as well.
Like all of this, right? I think the biggest thing is going to be the behavior, because I think with any tool, when we have visibility and we have the ability to track, the tendency is to revert to old patterns of behavior, where it's to seek to control the minutia. It's not done until 100% of the things are done and my task bar is 100%. And that's not the intent, right? We want to have visibility so we can have conversations, so we can negotiate the least amount of work possible to deliver the maximum amount of value. And, a tool is a tool. And, you can use a hammer the right way or you can use a hammer the wrong way. But no matter how you use the hammer's just a hammer, right? And it's the same way with the tools that we're building. The tools that you're building, they give us great capability, right? They allow us to have very deep and informed conversations in the right context. And what we need to be very cognizant of, and when I say we, it's the folks that are helping you all implement and helping you adopt across an enterprise. We have to keep track of those behaviors, those mindsets, values, and principles that make this way of working efficient and human, right? So we need to be careful that you give great capability and great visibility. Measurement is a tool that helps us better understand our system so we can make better decisions. It's not a tool that we use to, just control, right? I think that's cool. I think all of the things that you're doing are amazing. And I think it's just an opportunity, again, to double down on, you've got a lot of information. Use it for good. Don't use it for your own political agenda.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's finding that balance as well, isn't it, Adam? Because as you know, like if you start a project or program from scratch, it's a lot easier to go in there with the agile mindset and kind of work out what your value stream would be and be able to slice it all up and and put it into the required funnels. But going into an organization that is 500 years old, but they've got their own way of working and they've been kind of split up into either components or just really strange technical stacks that they've got going on. It's so difficult for them to manage, and not through any fault of their own. They've been trying to turn things that they can be in control with as agile as possible, but then it stops at that delivery team level, doesn't it? And we trying to find that balance with assisting them, but not showing it that it's the right way of working, if that makes sense. So that's you know what I mean?
I do. And I think a lot of organizations, especially the larger, older ones, where they're at currently is a byproduct of, them also trying to move too fast. I see a lot of organizations that have grown as a result of acquisition, but without integration, right? So they buy a company and they say, cool, you're a part of us now. But then the systems are only connected through very rudimentary, either cron jobs or whatever it might be. And they never wholly integrated that. So those are always going to be bottlenecks until we make them not. And I worked with an organization a lot of years ago that was in that exact same scenario, and they were responsible for shipping packages. And you could tell their acquisitions based on the fact that they had 9 unique formats of tracking numbers based on those entities that they acquired. So you would be like, I'm shipping a package with this company. Then they would ask, well, what's the service? Because based on what the service is, we're going to direct you somewhere else to track it because they're entirely different formats, different character compositions, different character counts, all the things. And that seems like an easy problem to solve, right? Like, why wouldn't you just integrate and have one? And that ended up being a multi-year, like in some degrees, like a legal battle, because those entities, though they're under the same umbrella, are still independent companies. And to just have a common tracking number, it required lawyers and finance people and all of the people you could possibly imagine just to get to one of that to that one customer centric ideal of having a common tracking number. And if you're thinking of all of the things you can do in an organization throughout a year, you could say, well, to our customers, it's really important to have a common tracking number, but at what cost? Right? So what are all of the other things that we can't do across all of these entities? Because the vast majority of our capacity has to go into this thing of a common tracking number. So what's the trade-off? And you're right, in some cases, the answer is going to be that we continue to accept the complexity because in the short term, through the complexity, we can deliver these things that are incrementally more valuable than this one big thing. So, and that's for those large companies, that's the balance, right? We want to be bigger. We want to be faster. We want to be more efficient. We want to be, architected in a more elegant way. But there's a trade-off because the market's not going to wait for you while you do that. The market's going to continue to evolve. So during that time, while you're trying to be more efficient and more elegant, are you going to lose your market share? And I think that's the conundrum that a lot of these big companies find themselves in, right? And also, if you look in the automotive sector, they've taken a wholly different approach. Where I know, like the Mercedes Group, I know Ford in the U.S., they've started brand new companies focused on technology with clean stacks because they've decided that instead of trying to fix the things that they have, it's going to be easier to behave like a startup and start with a clean slate. So you've got, like I have a Mustang Mach-E downstairs, which has a really elegant technology solution, but it wasn't built on the architecture that Ford's had for the last 30 years, right? It wasn't built on that technology. It was totally greenfield, clean slate. And what they've learned again is that that's the most efficient way for them. And there's a lot of others that are doing that as well. I think if you would talk to organizations 10 years ago, it was let's modernize our stack. And now it's, well, is that the right thing? Or do we just start over? Because maybe that's the most efficient thing. Maybe that's the most cost-effective thing. So it's an interesting time. And at the same time, I mean, they still cross-communicate, right? So my Ford Bronco is built on old technology. My Ford Mustang Mach-E is built on new technology. And somewhere through the technology in the middle, they can still recognize each other, live in the same app, and behave similarly, even though they're very different. So those are really cool, nerdy problems that someone else is solving. Fortunately, they're using safe. But at the same time, it's an interesting time in the world where big companies are trying to behave like startups. Some of the startups are becoming big companies and behaving less like startups. And we're just trying to help everybody do the right thing and satisfy customers.
I think that's what's been fantastic about Safe, and it's evolved tremendously since we started looking at it in 2018, especially with that upper level as well. And I know that it will improve as well.
Well, and that's table stakes, right? I mean, you look at team agility. We figured that out a long time ago, right? It's easy to look at a solution and deploy a team and say, let's follow XP, let's do all of these best practices. But the biggest problems to solve are really in strategy and figuring out. It's so fascinating to me, Justin. Like if you look at post-World War II, companies were making 30 and 40 year strategic plans. Now, if a company comes to me and says, well, this is what I'm doing over the next 1 to 3 years, I kind of raise an eyebrow because I'm like, you don't know what the world's going to look like in 6 months. And I think we've kind of figured out the team bit. We've done a lot to figure out the art bit and how to deliver value that way. I think really understanding how we deliver capabilities in large solutions is really interesting. If you look at like the F-35 Raptor jet, that's a really big program. That's a big thing, large technical solution. But then you realize that you need a solution train just to deliver the helmet that the people wear in the airplane, because that one helmet in itself is more complicated than most aircraft that were ever created in history. You really start to understand the complexity of the opportunity ahead of us. And so figuring out those solutions is hard, but figuring out how do we create an adaptive strategy that allows us to say we're going to build a complicated next generation fighter jet over the next 10 years. And I also have no idea what the technology is going to look like. We're going to have to allow that to evolve, because if I pick a solution today and deliver it in 10 years, it's outdated 5 years before delivery. So those are the interesting problems that we're working on. And I think it's cool because places like Kendis can give us visibility into those programs and help us make better decisions as we work towards those really cool big outcomes, like delivering a jet or delivering a next generation financial management system powered by ChatGPT. And I'm just making up words, but I mean, that's kind of the point, right? There's things that are emerging, and our biggest competitive advantage is how quickly can we respond to the emerging trends? And it's going to require a network of relationships to do that in visibility, which is where you come in, right? You're able to show us where are those connections, where are those organizational touch points. Based on the shift in the strategy, who do we need to connect with? Who do we need to collaborate with to pivot our delivery to meet this new strategic, whatever it might be?
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, what advice would you give then to businesses who are, kind of like your first example, where you just joined this company, they've been going for 800 years, and they've got their own different stacks and their own different terminologies and ways of working. What example would you give for them to kind of steer more towards being able to prioritize and being able to strategize a lot more at the portfolio level, at the top level?
So I like to go back to my okay, I'm gonna get way goofy here for a second. I had the opportunity a few years ago to meet Taylor Swift. And
Oh, dear Lord.
Hey, Justin, I'm a Swiftie. I'm a Swiftie.
Oh,
Come on now. I do like her. She speaks to my soul. At any rate, I had the opportunity to meet her, and I could speak to her like a human, like just a regular person. I've worked directly with Dean now for 6-7 years, and I still can't talk to the man. I still feel like I don't want to do anything to disappoint him. I still feel like I still have a lot of admiration and respect for him. And I shouldn't say still. I mean, he's a really good human. And when you realize that he was essentially retired when Scaled Agile started, the reason why he came out to do this again is because he has a very firm belief that if we don't help organizations like who you mentioned compete in this digital age, we're all going to be working for about one of 4 tech trillionaires in the next decade. I think Elon's got a lot of cool things going on. I don't want to work for him. I don't want to work for Bezos. I don't want to work for Tim Cook, and I don't want to work for Microsoft. So I think our compelling reason is if you don't figure this out, you will absolutely go out of business. I don't care how old you are. If you look at the S&P 500 and realize that, a decade ago or 15 years ago, GE was like the gold standard of how you wanted to run a business, and they're not even on the S&P 500 now. And if you look at the rate of turnover on the S&P 500 over the last 5 years, there's so many companies that are just no longer there. So I don't care how big you are. I don't care how old you are. You're not immune from disruption. And if you don't start figuring this out, I don't care how much cash you have. I don't care about your history. You will cease to exist. So that's the reason why, right? We want a competitive global market. Diversity in business offerings and just consumer choices and all of those things is what makes the world such an interesting place. Like, I want to be able to have a choice between a Kendis and a PIplanning.io and, some of those other companies that shall not be named. Having that competitive landscape is what makes everyone better. And if we eliminate the options and we're stuck with just the people who figured out the tech, well, then it's going to stop evolving, right? Because without competition, there is no evolution, there is no innovation. So I'll caution that for a lot of those organizations, it also requires a generational evolution. You're not going to go into a 500-year-old company with management that's been there for 30 years and convince them that 5 years before they retire, we need to shake the whole thing up. But what you will be able to do is you will be able to communicate with that next generation of leaders, and they will understand. And it requires a bit of patience for that evolution to take place, because in a large company like that, that's what it really requires. It's an evolutionary perspective on revolutionary thinking. So we understand the why, we understand what needs to change. We do what we can now. In consulting, we always say we meet the client where they're at. So we start where we can, we impact the things that we can. And as the organization evolves, we take those new philosophies and new ways of working with us. So as we grow, as we evolve our influence in the organization, those ideas can take hold. And I think that for some organizations, the evolution is just going to be too long. They're not going to have enough time for the natural attrition to allow the change to come in. And if leadership doesn't decide to make the change, well, they're going to suffer. But then there's others that I've seen that have been very successful. They've been able to successfully manage the evolution. And it takes time to be all in different. But they do get there, and they do it at a pace that allows them to be competitive in the market, even though it's not an all-in big bang all at once. I think if you look at like the example of a Ford, their need to go out and create this new technology division or new startup division, I forget how they market it. That's in nature of their industry. Their industry is not going to wait for the evolution to take place. They have to do something drastic now. I think other organizations like, most financial institutions and insurance institutions, and of course, government, no one's disrupting government. They have more of a luxury of the evolutionary pace because the nature of their market is less competitive. So I think that's going to be a big thing. I think it's going to be evolutionary, and the pace of the evolution will be dictated based on the competitive landscape of your industry. Some will be faster, some will be slower. All will require patience. And even though we would all love to have a silver bullet that just magically changes things overnight, I think we've learned that that's not going to happen. And we all have a lot of work left ahead of us.
I think that's a really good description. And you pray to God that whilst being patient, there's no collapse. There's nothing,
Patience with a sense of urgency, I think is a good.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that one.
All right, Justin. So let's wrap this up. Give me 3 things I should be excited about from Kendis over the next 6 to 9 months.
Well, in Kendis, so we've got a concept called batches, which I think is going to excite people. That's like the grouping up, whether it's products, whether it's programs, you can group up and then you can have that hierarchy. So that's coming out in the next couple of weeks. The ability to have strategic themes and it flow down into various different departments or various release trains as objectives. You can even create features or epics, whatever you'd like from there directly. So that's something to look forward to. And also the roadmap view. So we've got an extension on the roadmap that we've got in Kendis. We call it timeline. But you'll be able to look at, have a year view or 18 months view. You can plan longer term, not just for your 3 months. So I think those are the 3 things that people will be most excited about in Kendis.
So if I want to test drive it, where do I go? What do I do? Do I just call and say, hey, Justin said, or is there a better solution?
You can go onto our website. You can trial it on the website, and that would bring down to the cloud version. We do have what we call self-hosted version, on-prem version, and you can just get a link to that and download it locally. But if it's you, Adam, just give me a shout. I'll give it to you for free.
I'm not building anything yet. Like I said, I'm starting vacation here in 7 minutes, and I'm going to play golf today. I'm going to maybe ride my motorcycle. I'm going to do not a whole lot of anything. So maybe when I'm back in 10 days, I'll play with it, but not today. I'm going to turn off the computer, turn off the phone. All right, Justin. So kendis.io is the site, kendis.io. And obviously you've got a good safe solution. That was an intended pun, by the way. Good safe solution and secure solution. There's a lot of cool things coming. I've really appreciated our time together. If people are in love with you, Justin, they just have to get more. Where can they find you?
Oh, Justin@Kendis.io. Just email me directly.
I love it. Justin, thanks for the time, man. I appreciate your grace too. I know we were supposed to chat last week, but boy, oh boy, I sometimes plan things and just run out of hours. So I appreciate your grace on that. It was great to talk to you. I hope to see you at a Safe Summit in the future so I can buy you a beer and we can talk about grunt stuff.
It will be a glass of rum, but yes, thank you very much. I hope the same for you as well.
Justin, thanks again, man. If there's anything that the people need, they'll find you at Kendis.io. Justin, thank you for taking the time. We'll catch you soon.
Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. The entire team at Scaled Agile is focused on helping you be better at work so that you can help your enterprise be more successful in the new age of business. If there's anything else we can do to help, if there are any other assets you'd like to see, content, podcast guests, just let us know. Also, please check out Safe Studio where you'll find tools, toolkits, resources, videos, and so much more to help you be successful in the world of work. As always, if you appreciate this content, the greatest compliment you can give us is a referral to a friend or colleague. And if you feel so inclined, we do always appreciate those likes, comments, subscribes, and reviews on your podcast platform of choice. My name is Adam Mattis. Until next time, as they say, stay safe.